Europe, the year 1696. A challenge echoes across the continent, a puzzle so daring, so clever, that the greatest minds of the era are given 6 months to solve it. The problem: to find the curve of fastest descent, the path along which a body falls quicker than any other. The challenger? Johann Bernoulli, a brilliant yet fiery Swiss mathematician with a flair for drama. The responders? The brightest mathematical stars of the age. But one man, working late into the night after a long day at the Royal Mint, glances at the problem, takes out his pen, and solves it before going to bed. His name? Isaac Newton. This is the story of the battle of the brains, the Brachistochrone Problem. The late 17th century was a time of extraordinary transformation. The scientific revolution was in full force. Telescopes were aimed at the heavens, clocks ticked with newfound precision, and the very laws of nature seemed to be yielding their secrets to human reason. Mathematics was the crown jewel of this intellectual awakening. Geometry, algebra, and the fledgling field of calculus were giving scholars new ways to tame the chaos of the universe. But it was also an era of rivalry. The academies of Paris, London, and Basel were hotbeds of ego and competition. Scholars often battled not just for truth, but for glory. Amid this atmosphere of dueling intellectuals, the Bernoulli brothers, Johann and Jacob, rose to prominence, famous for their genius and their quarrels. And towering above them all stood Sir Isaac Newton, already a legend, but now deeply engaged in practical affairs, serving as the warden of the Royal Mint in London. Among the great minds of this story, few burned brighter or fiercer, like Johann Bernoulli. Brilliant and theatrical, he relished the drama of mathematics. To Johann, a problem was not just a puzzle, but a stage on which to display his genius. He loved setting traps for others, daring them to stumble where he could stride with confidence. At his side, but often against him, stood his older brother, Jacob Bernoulli. Jacob was every bit as skilled, but theirs was a rivalry laced with bitterness. For the Bernoullis, mathematics was not just numbers and curves. It was a battlefield, and even family ties could not temper the clash of egos. Beyond Basel in Germany, another titan loomed, Gottfried Leibniz. Philosopher, diplomat, mathematician, he was the great rival of Isaac Newton, co-creator of the new and mysterious calculus. Leibniz and Johann Bernoulli were allies, united in both brilliance and in their resistance to Newton's towering dominance. And then, of course, there was Newton himself. By 1696, he was no longer the young recluse of Cambridge, but a man of authority, serving in London as warden of the Royal Mint. He was a statesman now, hardened by disputes and weary of endless quarrels. Yet behind his tired eyes, the sharpness of his mind remained undiminished. To his rivals, he was distant, even aloof. But to the world, he was still the lion of mathematics. In June 1696, Johann Bernoulli sent letters across Europe with a daring challenge. Given 2 points, A and B, not at the same height and not in a vertical line, what is the curve traced out by a point acted upon only by gravity that will reach from A to B in the shortest possible time? It was a problem that went beyond geometry. It demanded calculus, the new and still controversial mathematical tool that Newton and Leibniz had independently developed. Bernoulli gave Europe's mathematicians 6 months to submit their solutions. He wanted not only answers, but proof of mastery. The gauntlet had been thrown. Across Europe, the challenge spread like wildfire. Leibniz studied it carefully, Jacob Bernoulli wrestled with it. Other mathematicians, great names of their time, tried and faltered. The problem was subtle. The shortest path between 2 points is a straight line, but that is not the fastest descent under gravity. A steep drop followed by a gentle slope might be quicker. The curve had to balance speed and distance perfectly. The answer lay hidden in the mathematics of light and refraction, echoing Fermat's principle that light takes the path of least time. And while many strained for months, Johann Bernoulli waited eagerly to see who would rise to the challenge. In London, the challenge eventually reached Isaac Newton. By then, Newton was deeply involved in his duties at the Mint, cracking down on counterfeiters, reforming the currency. He was no longer chasing academic glory. Yet when the problem was laid before him, Newton could not resist. One evening after work, he took the challenge home. He shut himself in his study. By candlelight, surrounded by his books, he worked deep into the night. Within a matter of hours, Newton derived the solution, the cycloid curve, the same path traced by a point on the rim of a rolling wheel. He submitted his... When Johann Bernoulli saw it, he recognized the unmistakable mastery. He famously declared, "I recognize the lion by his paw." Newton had solved in a single night what others had agonized over for months. The solutions trickled in. Leibniz, Jacob Bernoulli, and a few others managed it, but Newton's stood apart in its elegance and speed. Johann Bernoulli had sought to test Europe's greatest minds. Instead, he reinforced Newton's mythic reputation. But the challenge also cemented the power of the new calculus. The Brachistochrone problem could not be solved by geometry alone. It demanded the tools of a new age. For Johann and Jacob Bernoulli, the challenge deepened their rivalry. Jacob published his own solution, but clashed bitterly with Johann over priority. Their feud would consume their family for years. For Newton, the victory was sweet, but brief. His animosity with Leibniz over the invention of calculus soon erupted into one of the most infamous priority disputes in science. The Brachistochrone was solved, but the battle of egos raged on. The Brachistochrone problem is more than just a mathematical puzzle. It represents the birth of the calculus of variations, a whole new branch of mathematics. It showed how abstract math could solve real physical problems, and it symbolized the brilliance and the rivalries of an age where knowledge was power. Most of all, it immortalized Newton's mind. The story of the lion's paw became legend, proof that even at rest, Newton's intellect prowled above all others. The Brachistochrone problem was not just a test of skill. It was a duel of egos, a glimpse into an age when science was young and fiercely competitive. Newton's overnight triumph reminds us of the sheer power of human genius. But it also asks us, in our own age of problems and puzzles, who will be the lions of our time? If you enjoyed this story of rivalry, genius, and discovery, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the hidden battles of history.